Here's how the New York Times put it in a headline today. Trump says abortion restrictions should be left to the states. After months of mixed signals, Donald Trump said that whatever states decide must be the law of the land. Similar headline over at the Washington Post. In new video, Trump says abortion policy should be left to states. Reuters had effectively the same takeaway. It was the Reuters headline. Trump says abortion laws should be decided by U.S. states. Similar in The Guardian, Trump says each U.S. state should determine different abortion laws. Same thing over the Wall Street Journal. They gave theirs a little flourish. Trump says states should chart their own paths on abortion. Today, Donald Trump did put out a video statement in which he did indeed say that restrictions on abortions are things that should be decided by individual states. Looking at these headlines, you might get the impression that that was somehow Trump moderating his position on abortion. These headlines are exactly what Donald Trump wanted after delivering his remarks on abortion today. Sadly, that is exactly what he got, even though the actual content of Donald Trump's remarks today indicated something very different than what was in those headlines. The substantive, new and important thing articulated by Donald Trump today was that he has now abandoned any criticism he once had for the strictest abortion bans that are now in effect or under consideration. And I love me some New York Times, and I love the Washington Post, and I love Reuters, and I love the Guardian, and I love the Wall Street Journal. I revere the free and fair press. And I could not do 98% of what I do without reporting from institutions like these to give us the facts on which we base everything that we do in the news business. But the headline spin today from multiple excellent news agencies about what Trump did was just absolutely at odds with the importance of what he said. I mean, Florida has a total ban on abortion, a 6-week ban on abortion that is set to go into effect on May 1st. Trump, until now, was critical of strict abortion bans like Florida's. He used to call abortion bans like that too severe. He called the Florida abortion ban a, quote, terrible mistake. Today, Trump eliminated that from his vocabulary. He voiced no concern whatsoever with Florida's abortion ban or any other abortion restriction any state might want to impose. Trump used to be a critic of 6-week bans. Now he's apparently fine with them. Trump was also silent on the issue of a national abortion ban, which his own party has been relentlessly pushing. A national ban is something he himself reportedly said he supports as recently as a few weeks ago. Trump today also, for what it's worth, falsely accused Democrats of executing children. That's what he said Democrats' abortion policies are. It's to execute children, which is a nice QAnon flavor to it, in addition to being completely false. And so perhaps a more accurate headline about Donald Trump's remarks today might have been something like, channeling QAnon conspiracy theory, Donald Trump falsely accuses Democrats of executing children, or Trump abandons previous criticism of strictest state abortion bans. Trump avoids mention of Republican proposals for national restrictions. I mean, or maybe try something like this. Donald Trump also said today that he is, quote, proudly the person responsible for the ending of the constitutional right to an abortion. Proudly the person responsible for the overturning of Roe versus Wade. He did explicitly say that today, and that would have made for a great headline. Trump takes personal credit for ending the constitutional right to abortion in America. Abandons criticism of most draconian abortion bans, right? Short, snappy, accurate, rightfully spotlighting the issue that Roe versus Wade is gone, and it's because of him. That's not how it got covered today, which I'm sure Trump was delighted with. But the substance of the matter here gets darker from here, because when the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, thanks to Trump, we didn't just lose the Roe versus Wade ruling and thereby the constitutional protection of the right to an abortion. We also got something new. Right? The case that overturned Roe versus Wade was called Dobbs. That decision created a brand new legal standard, one that would provide a precedent for taking away civil liberties of all kinds, one that could be applied not just to abortion, but also to, say, the rights of gay people. I mention that because we're seeing ripple effects from that decision, not only now in our own country, but far, far away from us, a continent away. In the nation of Uganda, activists there have been fighting a radical, deadly new law that effectively hunts gay people. This new law in Uganda punishes people just for being gay, punishes them with life in prison in some cases. In some cases, it punishes being gay with the death penalty. The second highest court in Uganda just upheld most of that law, including the death penalty part of it. In their ruling, the court in Uganda cited Dobbs as the justification for why the Kill the Gays bill is legally sound. We didn't just get the overturning of Roe versus Wade thanks to Donald Trump. We got the new standard that replaces it, this Dobbs standard that is now being cited internationally as evidence that even in America, nobody has a right to bodily autonomy, not to get an abortion, and not to survive your own government if they decide to kill you for being gay. Joining us now is Melissa Murray, law professor at New York University. Melissa, thanks very much for being here. It's really nice to see you.
Great to be here.
I, despite appearances, do not love doing media criticism. It's not my forte. I'm also not a lawyer. But I did feel like the legal or the headline coverage today, the media coverage today of Trump's statement sort of missed the nut of what it is that he actually said and the implications of his statement. As a lawyer, as a close observer of these things, do you agree?
I think that's right. Donald Trump has sort of tacked back on issues of reproductive freedom. He had said that he was in favor of a ban on abortion at perhaps 15 weeks. 20 weeks, that would still be actually quite a significant development. I mean, it really shows how much the Overton window has shifted since Dobbs. A 15-week ban, a 20-week ban would have been patently unconstitutional under Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. So we've really moved far beyond that. But again, this has been an issue with him and with his party. They keep moving further and further to the right, and it seems he's willing to go there. And as you say, it's not just questions of reproductive freedom in this country. Dobbs has unsettled a whole body of jurisprudence that guarantees privacy, dignity, and bodily autonomy for all individuals. And it has ripple effects in other areas like marriage, like consensual sex. And we are seeing that not here in the United States just yet, but in other places. And it's very clear that we could also feel those reverberations in this country as well.
Well, what do you make of this court in Uganda citing Dobbs as essentially as a way to hold up America as a country that also believes there is no bodily autonomy, that the state is right to encroach on your bodily autonomy, in this case, including to institute the death penalty for certain offenses associated with homosexuality? What do you make of them citing us in that way for that purpose?
Well, I mean, Dobbs is an authoritarian opinion, and this is a decision that promotes the kind of authoritarianism we thought we had said goodbye to in this country when Bowers versus Hardwick was overruled in 2003, decriminalizing same-sex sex. But it's not just that the Ugandan court said that Dobbs eliminated any right to bodily autonomy in the United States. What they said specifically was that this was a question that was reserved for the people and was being returned to the people, and the people were debating this. And essentially, it's just a claim that majority will can and should prevail even over basic protections for minorities and protections for fundamental rights. So it is essentially a call for mob rule, and we're seeing it in Uganda, and we could certainly see it here. I mean, people forget that Justice Thomas's concurrence in Dobbs was basically an invitation to begin litigating a range of different protections, like protections for contraceptions, protections for intimate life, like same-sex sex and same-sex marriage. All of those are on the table now that Roe has fallen and Dobbs is the law of the land.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.